Welcome back to another episode of Some Guy in His Kitchen talking about music. You know, John Wayne said that life is hard, but it's harder when you're stupid. At least he gets credit for that. I don't know if he actually said that or not. I've never seen video of it or recording. I'm having hot cider with rum and cinnamon in it tonight. It's a cold, nasty night out there, much like the night I found Patty. Anyway, I'm not sure how to make this video. Not without stepping on some people's toes. But maybe there's some toes that need stepped on. I don't know. I get a lot of messages on Facebook, text messages from my friends, and they're obsessed with gear. And that's fine. I get obsessed with gear too. I love old guitars. I love new guitars. I love strings. I love picks. I love microphones. I like all of it. I love it a little too much. I think that's why I've kept the production style of these videos down to the minimum, so I can focus more on just what I want to say. Alright. I'm going to drop some truth on some people, and they probably don't really want to hear this, but medium gauge strings are cool. Light gauge strings are cool. Casing picks are cool. Delrin picks are cool. But none of them are music. None of them are a song. I love gear. I love playing it. I like talking about it. I love researching it, watching videos of it. But more than any of that, I love music. And, well, sometimes gear makes making music easier. Sometimes option paralysis also makes making music with a lot of gear harder. So we're not going to talk about gear tonight as I'm shooting this. But I am going to talk about some books that helped me make music. I'm sorry if this shakes the camera. This is really unprofessional of me, but I was going through some books. The first book that I think I should talk about is related to an instrument. It's an instrument that, once damaged, is awfully hard to get repaired. However, it's very hard to steal, and it's also very hard to silence. It can be very loud, it can be very powerful, and it can carry a lot of weight. Of course, I'm talking about vocals. Now, this is the Mark Baxter Rock and Roll Singer's Survival Manual. This is put out by Hal Leonard. I think, it clocks in at just under $20 brand new. I've seen used editions of it on Amazon sometimes for about $4. It's a no-brainer. The thing I like about it, well, the rock and roll moniker, the title, I think, was just mostly get people's attention. This was really a great resource for independent artists and people who aren't singing opera. Most vocal books are about singing classical or jazz for some reason. This book taught me to stop blowing my voice out. It showed me a lot of proper technique, how I gained some power as a singer. Helped me with intonation. A lot of things, physical, mental. The great thing about it is you can go, oh, what am I struggling with? I can't hit the note in this song. That should be otherwise easy. You can go in there and probably find a few paragraphs that demonstrate your conundrum. It's well illustrated. It's very well written, and like I said, you don't necessarily have to read it cover to cover. You can go in there and find your problem, find your challenge, figure out some solutions that this guy actually found working solutions for. And it's really good. And again, if you can get it under $20, it's a no-brainer. Your voice is probably the most powerful piece of gear you own if you're a singer-songwriter. And it's probably the one thing people obsess about the least. So Highly recommend it, even if you're saying, books aren't necessarily for me. I get it. I'm on the go all the time. I don't really get a chance to read books cover to cover. This one, absolute godsend. Now, as someone who's self-educated, technically I'm homeschooled, but I consider myself more self-educated, especially on the higher level stuff. Cliff Notes has several great publications out there, but this one I picked up for $1 off the discount book bin at Half Price Books. It's Writing, Grammar, Usage, and Style. This one really helped me a lot, and I could probably stand to go back through and reread some more of it. But singular and plural nouns, collective nouns, verbs and verbs used as nouns. I mean, it's just stuff that I never really paid enough attention to growing up. But it helped me be a more coherent songwriter and say what I needed to say without writing a whole entire page of lyrics to get to the point. Can't recommend something like this enough. It's got a lot to unpack there. There's a lot of stuff, but in a very digestible, easy to process method of publication. I love it. It's not a big, thick, college-bound edition of anything. And for $1, I couldn't pass it up, and I'm glad I kept it. Now, as far as songwriting instruction, I'm a big fan of this author, Sheila Davis. I've got 2 books here, and I've got a third one on a shelf somewhere in the other room. The Songwriter's Idea book, and The Craft of Lyric Writing. Both are excellent. To be honest, I've never finished these books. I will sit down to read them, and I will get through 3 or 4 chapters, and then suddenly I'm off writing songs again. If I'm in a rut, I pick these up, and sometimes I can't even get through the 3rd or 4th chapter, or sometimes even the first half of the first chapter before I got to go write a song. But very good, very no-nonsense approach to it. A lot of interesting stuff in the Writer's Idea book. Things to consider. Can't recommend them enough. Don't know if they're still in print. The prices originally weren't terribly expensive, and you could always go online and find used copies, I'm sure. More recently, this book, How to Write One Song by Jeff Tweedy, got published. I got a little bit of a confession to make. I'm not a big Wilco fan. It's funny. It seems like every indie songwriter I know, every indie band I know, somehow is influenced by Wilco. Tape Op Magazine, it seems like every issue they got some guy who's worked with Wilco. Wilco's worked with a lot of great people, and Nels Cline is a great guitar player. They're all great musicians. Something about Jeff's writing just never really clicked with me. And believe me, I've sat down in a studio with monitors, and I've turned the phone off and just listened to one of their records, track for track, several of their records, track for track. The way they were intended to be played back. It doesn't click. But Jeff's approach to songwriting, I thought, was very intuitive and very no nonsense. There was a lot less pretentious method in this book than I ever expected, and I can't recommend it enough. And again, it's not terribly expensive, and there is an audiobook version as well that Jeff reads and also seems to do some soundtrack work on, which is really interesting because you get to hear some of the audio examples of some of the songs that he talks about in here. So it's pretty cool. I gotta admit, it's pretty cool. And some things that I thought was rather interesting was he talks about how he structures his day as a songwriter. Now, he admits that, he's in a little bit of a situation where he's lucky to be Jeff Tweedy and it's his job. And if he gets up at 10 a.m. and starts writing songs from 10 to noon and then takes a break for lunch and comes back to it and, spends his entire day in a recording studio, it's his job. But it was interesting, he talked about time management, something that I feel like most songwriters I know are terrible with. Again, can't recommend it enough. Now, this one is going to be interesting to talk about. This is the Folk Singer's Word Book. Now, these are all ancient old folk songs. There's well over 1,000 of them with chord progressions. Now, I don't know every song in there, but there's quite a few of them that share common melodies, which is kind of cool. The thing I love about these old folk songs is they're public domain, so if you don't know the song, you can probably go find a YouTube video of somebody playing it, or find a Spotify recording of somebody who's released one of these songs at some point. What I think is important about these songs is that they have stood up to the test of time. Someone still published these songs hundreds of years after they were written. Now, some of the lyrics aren't very with the times, so to speak. There's various delicate subject matter in there, but it's interesting to see how great melodies were composed, chord changes. I was playing some of the tunes earlier, just messing around. And there's quite an education can be had from these older songs as far as melodic movement. I'm not going to throw anybody under the bus here, but there's a lot of my songwriter friends, they know about 6 or 7 chords, and they seem to only write with 3 of them at a time. Guys, I know Hank Williams is supposed to have said, all you need to be a country singer, songwriter, or whatever is to have 3 chords into truth for a country song. Even Hank Williams changed keys. And some of his songs had a little bit more than 4 chords if you were the rhythm guitarist, at least. If you're the chunk rhythm. Again, I'm not trying to throw anybody under the bus here, but learn some melodic structure, learn some melodic movements, learn how things shift from major to minor in the verses and the chorus. Learn some 7th chords. Learn how things move around, and a great way to do that is to play public domain songs. Some of these are really beautiful melodies. Songs like Shenandoah move around quite a bit. They jump octaves. They don't stay fully tonal in the 1 chord. And they're open to interpretation, of course, but it's a good idea to study the greats. And some of the greatest are not necessarily credited songwriters with active copyrights today. They're songs that were written and were so well beloved that they've handled the test of time. They've handled hundreds of years of reinterpretation and still somehow maintain the core essence of what made them great in the first place. So find something like this. If it's not this particular volume, Roger McGuinn has a great blog where he puts out a song at the beginning of every month. He's been doing it for I think 20 years now, with a little accompanying MP3. Just some great options out there. But study study some of the old songs. Don't just study what Tyler Childers or Sturgill Simpson or any of these new guys that have come along are doing. Those guys have been studying the greats and probably did a better job of it than we will. But it's a great idea. As far as like rhyming dictionaries and thesaurus, you can pick these up really cheap at the thrift store. You can pick them up at Half Price Books. Wherever cheap books are sold, you can probably find a serviceable edition. I'm not sure they're entirely necessary, but it makes me feel like a better songwriter for having one on my desk. Okay, this video is getting close to 17 minutes long, and I've tried to cut the ramble. Anyway, I should probably play us out and call this one a night. All right. See you later.